Am I audible in the back? Yeah. So, good afternoon. Last class we had all of you present something about your ideas as we discussed like the story work, not work. I recommended most of you to steer clear of processing ideas because they are a little bit bigger to handle and manage and focus on some products that you will go with. If nothing else, you can do a hair dryer or a toothbrush. Okay. But don't enter into those and after do some class use करने वाला हूँ मेरी कुछ ना these tasks will be better off for those of you who have process code and ideas. You will be better off to go with the very simple products than the process code that you talk about. And the programs you can use it on your idea. But think more of products than of product flows or systems. Management systems, that is. So, what were we doing in the last class? The last class before that. So, we looked at function modeling. And we said there are three parts of function modeling. The first part is component analysis. So, that we did that the class prior to that, and in the last class, we looked at the component analysis part. So, here I got kind of revise that discussion. And last class, we also did interaction analysis. And after that, we have what is called as function modeling. So, हम function analysis शुरू कर रहे थे. And in terms of component analysis, we discussed in detail that we have system components, we have super system components, and we have to identify super system components and also the target for our system, why the engineering system exists, what's the main purpose. And then we looked at interaction analysis, where we said that all the components which are either a part of system or super system, which interact with each other. And for interaction in this particular book, we said we would say touch. All the components that touch each other will be shown to have a plus sign in the interaction matrix. Where there is no interaction, and there is no touch, you will get minus. And we said this interaction matrix has to be symmetric across the diagonal. Because if A touches B, then B also touches A. So it has to be symmetric across the diagonal. And then we entered into what we called as function modeling, function analysis, and we were starting to define what is a function. Now, so, for example, again, I am not, for example, touching soil. physically I'm solving, but we are still interacting. So either I say that okay, there is air between us and air is carrying my sound, and that is how we touch. So I have to then model air and then I have to make a function of when Anuj speaks, his sound compresses the air and then that goes to the real terms and that is how touch is happening. Or I say, okay, because we are able to see me, you are able to acknowledge my presence. Here, touching. Depends on, suppose now, if I have to improve, let's say, if I have to improve, suppose I have to, this was a huge ground in which I was standing on the lab and standing going to speak about political speech or lunch speech. Then the person sitting, I will make this from me, will not be able to listen. Then, okay, we are touching now the side. If what I would, if it is not a act, if it's a speech, then we are not touching. Then the system is about, okay, how to make that person hear me? Then I would not say that we are touching. Then I would say, okay, there is this air, there is this noise, there is this, there is that. And now I have to have a system, engineering system, so that that person can also listen to that.
So the system when it's going up and down, it's not visible neurons. The neuron is turning off and on the switch, which in turn switch on and off the neuron. So the flow up and down is impacting the motor on.
Yeah, but is the flow directly touching the one?
Yeah, but this
That's the way there is no touch.
so we can't say that in that.
It has to be a direct connection here. Jango, why are these? Some of you ask me why are you buying it? But is that interaction worth trying? What do you think? You have to be judicious in what kind of things you want. Which you not only I could still cannot physically touching you. But still be an interaction. I would still be because you are in the same room, you are able to see me, you are able to hear me out, we are interacting. So हमें उतना डिटेल में जाना है जहाँ से हमारी प्रॉब्लम जो है प्रॉब्लम है ठीक है you go into more detail and you are then entering into components of the therapy. You go into less detail again, you are entering into a system where you will not be able to solve the problem because you will not have all the interactions. So we have to do again, these are important stages, and there is a possibility that you may do it wrong. And when you do it wrong, you have to go back and redo it. You learn that after. So you already know the scope of your problem, is it not? You have the problem solving tool. So you already know there's a problem. Even if the problem is okay, system is functioning fine, but it is costly. The problem is its cost. So you know the problem. You define everything in the scope of the problem and the hierarchy at which you are going to operate. Now coming to functions. So what are functions? What are functions?
Action performed by one thing to change the parameter of system.
So one of the things about functions are they have a verb. A verb involved, they have two components of the engineering system or super system. And there's a carrier and a object of a function. And the object and the function either changes or maintains some parameter of the object. So a function does something to the object. So component to component main has to be there has to be an interaction. Some parameter has to change or be maintained. अब ये भी बात करिए अगर हमारे को क्या दोनों के फंक्शन में उसके लिए we are not able to identify a verb, We can actually just talk about the hammer changes the position of the nail. If the verb that you want to be very, very clear, technical, you just say change the position of the nail. And you cannot use there comes the yes.
For maintenance, for maintenance.
Or many, for example, if I have a thermostat, it maintains the temperature of the water inside. That's also. This table is maintaining the position of the phone that happens.
Yes, but the phone getting placed on the table has no action.
There is a touch happen, no? There is a touch happen, there is a possibility of a function. Now, what is that function? It is inconsequential for you. Because you're not worried about the phone, you're worried about the notebook. And the phone is there. I'm not saying take the phone. I'm saying the table is maintaining the position of the phone. I've clearly defined what is a doing for the phone. People start keeping the phone. I said it's maintaining the position for that function. So we said that we cannot use declarative statements in defining functions. Why? Because they are subject and object. The moment we use the term case or protects, the definition will be subjective. For you, something is clean, for us, something else is clean. For you, something is protection, for him, something else is no protection. We do not use declarative verbs when we define functions. We have to be extremely clear. So helmet protects head or helmet, that is not a valid function because protect is a declarative statement. But helmet deflects the bullet is a function. This is something that you can measure. What it deflects. Are you okay? And again, as I said, with action verbs, you can say what angle is changed, velocity is changed, temperature is changed, or maintain things like that. So now we will do toothbrush. All of you clean teeth. So what is the function of a toothbrush? So these are teeth of a dinosaur. So what does a function? What is the function of a toothbrush?
To remove the germs,
To remove the germs.
particles,
To remove the food particles. Okay.
to reach every part of
To reach every part of our mouth of the cavity. That is the function of a toothbrush. Oh, I'm just wanting to clear it out from your head. What is the function of a toothbrush? Cleaning the teeth. So cleaning the teeth. Yeah. To remove odor from the mouth. Okay. That will remove this function. So to clean teeth, to brighten teeth, to keep teeth clean, to prevent cavities, to make teeth healthy, all that. None of them is the right function. So what is the right function? To remove plaque, to remove food, to all of that from the teeth. And remove is the right function because you're changing the position. Oh, I cannot. You can measure what happens. But brightness, this is bright enough or not, bright enough or not.
That's it. You can take that back.
So you look at the test level. Here is what you cannot.
Function is you can measure.
function. Whatever verb you are using, or whatever change and parameters you're talking about, that should be measured. Declarative verb we can't measure. It is subjective. That is why that is not a valid function. Is that okay? Declarative statements cannot be used in defining functions. So, guidelines of naming a function. There are no negative formulations. For example, an open door does not stop people. Cannot be a negative declaration. That cannot be a negative statement. क्या कर रहा है वो बताओ क्या नहीं कर रहा है तो बात किधर नहीं कर रहा है. I can put 1,000 things that something doesn't do. So no negative formulations. What does it do is what I'm interested in, and I'm doing function analysis. Okay. Then there are no declarative formulations which build up or deliberated about that thing. Being as specific as possible. Even if it wants, requires you to say that we're maintaining the temperature of water for 8 hours or between 5 degrees Celsius and 80 degrees Celsius. इससे ऊपर होगा तो गारंटी नहीं है, but so be as specific as possible. And again, as I said, if you can't think of a verb, use X changes Y parameter of Z. And document only consequential functions. Air cools coffee, not coffee is air. For example, दोनों इंटरैक्शन तो पर है, दोनों actions valid भी हैं. Having a hot coffee to the stove, having a hot coffee to the stove. But somehow even the air also around it. But is that a consequence to me in this room? No. Air cools coffee, is there a consequence to me? It's all about the hot coffee. However, if I were the AC, if I was to set up an AC plant, then let us say Starbucks. Hot coffee or coffee when you're having it. That hot coffee heats the air, becomes an important function, and that's that. Because my job as an engineer over there was to maintain the cooling of the shop. So over there, I will not model that air cools coffee. That is not my moderation. That is user moderation. My moderation is that the ambient temperature in the shop should be cool enough, and that is what source of heat. Yes, I have to display it. I have to focus on variables. So we want the function which are on sequence to my problem at hand. Is that it? System, any questions? Because otherwise, you can just explode. And the number of functions or all that, and then the analysis will slow down. Now, there can be multiple functions between a function carrier and an object of a function. It is not necessary that a carrier and an object are only one function. I mean, multiple functions between a carrier and its object. A carrier may have multiple functions on multiple objects. And the carrier of a function can itself be an object of another function. So, there is the first component is a carrier of function 3, but an object of function 4. Are you able to see this? And this is how our systems always are, is it not? There is a lot of interaction going on. Wherever there is a touch, there can be interactions going both ways. Whatever is of consequence to us, we should be ready to model. So, for every plus sign in the interaction matrix, you have put one function may not be sufficient. You may need to put many functions to completely describe the interaction between two components of an engineering system. And all of them you should list down. All those functions which are of consequence to your system, to your problem check. Is that okay?
Sir, अगर function define करें, तो सबसे point of view से अलग होती है।
Sorry?
जैसे function define कर रहे हैं, मेरे point of view से student है, तो मुझे grade डालना है, टीचर है, उनको काम से सैलरी मिलता है, उनके point of view से फिर अलग होगा, मेरे point of view से अलग होगा।
Yeah, so if his question is that depending on whether I'm a carrier or whether what my role is in the system, the function may be different. Yes. Yeah, that's right. If pools, coffee and coffee pools and those are happening, depending on if I'm talking about your learning outcomes and you are interested in your learning outcomes, you would be more interested in how does Anuj teach or how do I review the notes. And based on my teaching outcomes or learning outcomes of this entire course, I would be interested in okay, how much of my whatever I have discussed with you, you will even it. Questions will become different and what I'm doing, my functions will also become different. That is definitely good. And whichever problem we are trying to solve, that is how the definition of the function in that particular function model will change. So function model is made for the problem that you are interested to solve. Is that okay? It describes the system in perspective of the problem that you are solving. It obviously can be made very, very rich to describe it. Every interaction in the system, but that will only make the things complex for you. Is that okay? So, what is the main function of a system? So let us say, what is the main function of this car? To move person from one position to another. One place to another. Okay? To move objects from one place to another. Okay? And we discussed about Ferrari. There's been parked there, it has some function. What is that function? It will inform others about how it's happening. That is also a function. So yes, for a typical car, the main function would be to move passengers and cargo. To move passenger and cargo. That is the typical function of a car. And for any system, generic system, the object of the main function is called as target. So for that car, the target would be person or cargo. And whatever is the target is always a part of the super system. It is not a part of the system. Because the engineering system doesn't exist to sustain itself. It is to solve some problem, do something. That is the target. And target, therefore, is always a part of the super system. And many components may interact with the target, or only one component may interact with the target. Identifying the target is extremely important because if you do not clearly identify the target, you might end up solving problems which are not that important and leave out problems which are really important. There could be many super system components. Coffee cools air, but air was not the target. That is an inconsequential function. So, to identify the target, you have to look at the main function of the engineering system. What is the main purpose for which this engineering system exists? For example, the pesticide spray machine. What is the main function of this? To deposit pesticide on the body of the insect. That is the main function. How you doing it by spray? You're doing it in which other way? How effective it might be? But the main function is to deposit the pesticide on the body of the insect. हैंडल नहीं कर पाया है, उसकी बॉडी पे पड़ जाता है तो उससे जो स्पाइरल होते हैं they get blocked and then it dies. So you can ask what is the function of the VD side? Kill the lead. Kill the lead is again a little bit extended to deposit the VD side on the views of the body of the leads. Deposit that chemical there. Now, what is not deposited there is always. When you're talking about agriculture, I was just saying, some of you were talking about that, all of that 90% of pesticide or weedicide is wasted. It goes into the environment, it goes into the soil, it goes into the plant, and ends up getting environmental effect. Target के खाली 6 to 7% जा रहा है. That's the problem. It's a problem of cost, it's a problem of health, it's a problem of overall resource mismanagement. So, identifying the super system components that are the main focus, that are the focus of the main function, and whose parameters change as the result of the main function will help you identify the target. Is that okay? There is another aspect that we have to look at, a useful function and a harmful function. Now, whether on a target or on otherwise, every object or every carrier can have useful functions and harmful functions that they are driving onto some object. You have to mark all of them, especially the harmful ones. Because if you can remove the harmful functions, that in itself is a significant innovation. That itself is an aggregation. So whatever harmful functions you know of in your system, you should model it. You should record them. Useful functions, they change the parameters of the object in a desired direction. Harmful functions, they change them in the undesired direction. A harmful over here is not to be used as a declarative harm. मतलब health का harm वाला declarative नहीं है. Anything that moves the parameters in an undesired direction would be referred to as harmful. Is that okay? In the context of a toothbrush, useful function include preserves distribute the toothpaste, preserves move food, harmful function include they damage products. That's a harmful function. Okay. So you want to build a toothpaste, a toothbrush, which does not have any harmful function, and that would be an innovation. Okay? In a function model, so आप ध्यान रखो हमने जो function modeling की बात करी थी हमने कहा था it talks about cost, about effectiveness, about usefulness, about so many things about the function. So another feature or another dimension that we talk about when we do function modeling is the performance of the useful function. Normal performance means that it does its job well, as was expected, as was desired. Excessive means it does it more than what was needed, therefore, there would be a risk of something else. And deficient means that, or insufficient means that it does not do its job to the desired level of performance. So it is about performance. For example, let us say we want to change the temperature inside this room. We want to have the temperature at 28 degrees Celsius. But the AC is only able to take that to 30. Then it is insufficient. Takes it down to 28. It takes it down to 25. It is excess. So our desired direction में ही कितना जाता है? So it is not a harmful function. So harmful functions do not create on this axis because harmful functions are obviously taken in the wrong direction. But useful functions have to be qualified as to how well they are sufficient, excessive, or insufficient. You need to act on something if it is not sufficient. Even if it is excessive, you may want to act on it. Even if it is deficient, you may want to act on it. Is that okay? And then one of the last things about function, the lexicon of function modeling, that you have to rank the functions as basic functions, additional functions, and auxiliary functions. Basic functions are the functions on for whom the object is the target. Any function, useful function, any useful function on the target is called a basic function that gets a weight of 3 inputs. Right? Any function that is happening on the other supersystem components is an additional function of the engineering system. It gets a weight of 2. In the model that I'm talking about. And the exercise that I'm going to give you just now. And any function that is happening in between the components of my system itself, that is an auxiliary function. See, इस सब के अंदर ही खत्म हो गया. That has a data of one. We will review why this is important. But what is important is that you have to run functions. And when a very simple ranking, you may go for a more complex ranking for whatever projects you are choosing to work on. The essence of all of this is anything that touches the main object of my engineering system is the most important, given the highest rating. Anything that has any other influence on the super system, give it a little lower rating because it is not the main purpose. So you go back to the discussion of main parameter of balance diagram. So if it is linked to an NPV, you will want to give it very high rating. If it is not linked to an NPV, you will rate it a little lower. The scale need not be 3 to 1. The scale can be 10, 5, 1 or 10, 8. And you can have NPV level 1, NPV level 2, PVs. You can do all that. Do all that gradually for yourself. No challenge. Over here for this class exercise, I wanted to keep it very simple. And then the auxiliary functions are functions which are happening inside the engineering system itself. They are not even touching outside. They are not even going to the super system. And those are usually or that as a rule they have to be at the lowest rating. Okay. Yes. Here is the example. Toothbrush. Okay. What are the components of a toothbrush? The person, the teeth, and it holds the brush, the handle of the brush, the head, the bristles, toothpaste, all these are part of the brushing mechanism. And then there is also plaque that you can see on the teeth. There is also some food different things. So there's something on the teeth that needs to be removed. So if you try to make the function model around it, so see what are the functions that are happening between different components. The hand holds the handle and moves the handle. The handle holds and moves the head. The head holds and moves the bristles. The bristles remove plaque. The bristles distribute toothpaste. The toothpaste removes plaque. And the handle informs the user where I'm going up, down, down. Yeah, that handle, that is that because handle. These kind of functions. Now, what is the target?
Yeah, correct.
Huh? Target is plaque. Which are the basic functions? The function of the bristle removing the plaque and the toothpaste removing the plaque or losing the plaque. Okay. They are the basic functions. Then, which are the additional functions? User is a super system component. That's not a part of the brush. That is an additional function. The bristles distributing the toothpaste is a super system function. Is toothpaste a part of the brush? Since it's a super system component, it's a okay. And then remaining functions, because they are the system components only, and when it to head to bristles, all those are auxiliary functions.
Water could will be additional.
Distributes water will also be an additional function.
So the bus automatically after and stored it. Yes.
So the question is, the automatic होगा handle लॉर्ड जाता है handle तो तभी होता है यार सारे मुंह के अंदर उसके ऊपर ले जाएगा ऐसे धनुष ने बोला था कि वो एवरी कैपिटल ऑफ माय बॉटल कैपिटल को जाके साफ करेगा तो नहीं करता वो
So
इतने ही रोबोट कर देता है so no that's not so let us say is there something else that actually moves something like conveys an cavity in your mouth and does something? Moves far from everywhere. You know, all of you know that. What question? Not flush. That's the same function. And that's the same function. The orbit around in your upper cavity already that is your part. Dr. Johnson and Johnson or whoever makes those mouthwashes, they also make plaque. So most of what most product they use they use it for they say oh we remove plaque and that is why the bottle of mouthwash. The order is equal to plaque.
there in the sentence there's some required change and actual. So required change is something I use subjective.
So required change is like I want an expression to be 86. Actual is going to 30 only or going to end of defects. It is in the specification to use the meaning. It doesn't mean it's not different than what the objective would have. The objective of philosophy. Obviously, some user will say I want it 24. It is subjective, but for you, for your internet system, it is the user need. That's the fact. So now, you see, every component I can give them a score. Score of the bristles is 5. Why? Basic function plus additional function. Head only 2. Handle 4. Also it has an additional function up there. Now, if I have to reduce the cost, I would want to reduce the head somehow. So, any function. Are they able to see this? I may not be able to consider that. Right? This is the first place I should have. It is the lowest. It's the lowest functionality. That is the valuable functionality versus cost. If this costs me a lot, this is the first thing I will definitely. But the functionality is low. Or I would want to add more functionality for this somehow. Are you getting it? At this stage itself, you must start with the ideas about okay, what do I need to do with my problem shape? Are you with me? So we've just seen a function model, very visual one at that. All the dirty black was also visible there. Yeah. At target bottom. I'm just giving an example because we will do this a few steps later. So I'm saying is that putting that number or ranking helps me build that functionality on that chart. That function is cost. Because I need to know what to do with this component now. I have to add more functionality to it so that it becomes valuable. It is going to be there, I can't remove it, so I rather add more functionality to it. That is why head के नीचे वो भी आ जाता है छोटे-छोटे मिसल्स लगा देते हैं ताकि काम भी ज्यादा हो जाए. तो add that functionality there. ठीक है? तो very good example. It's not the commonplace है, you know it so well, you do it every day. So if you are intending to work on your crowd management or other high goals, please work on this refresh also. At least this is concept for you guys. So what I meant to show here was that this can be used. Ranking can help you bring in the cost element of value. Cost आपको पता है, cost को आपने कितने में बनाया, but this will give you the value of functions that come. That is why I said मैंने बहुत random focus का example लिया कि basic को 3 कर दो, additional को 2 कर दो, auxiliary को 1 कर दो. So what to decide differently that if something is impacting that particular entity, उस function की cost ही रखे. This is the most important entity. If something is impacting another entity, उसकी cost उसकी value नहीं रखो. This is the value in the function. Tracking the function and assigning some value to it. To optimize the system later. So ranking is about putting some value for the functions that a component performs. So how do we create a function model? First, indicate a component, identify and indicate all the functions of the indicated component using the interaction matrix. कहने का मतलब, you pick up, if you will do it for the paint filling system example, you pick up one component, you say what all it touches, and all those touch points, what all the possible functions that it could be performing. Okay. Then you determine and indicate the function ranks and determine and indicate the performance level of the function. Okay. It is a basic function performed to the level of sufficiency. It is an additional function performed insufficiently. It is a harmful function. A harmful function के आगे कोई rank नहीं है. It's just a harmful function, you have to remove it from the system. And so on. And you repeat steps 1 to 4 for all the components in your engineering system. Now, suppose you had put in irrelevant components also, your work would increase. Now, if you start to write down inconsequential functions also, then again your work would increase because now you have to rank them, you have to value them, and everything has to be done. So that is why we said always identify relevant functions only. Yes. Yeah, so indicate a component and then target तो सबसे पहले आपने define कर दिया, तभी तो आप basic function या कुछ भी और कर पाओगे. Target is already for the entire engineering system. No? Now, when we know the target, now we go into this. Every component we pick up one by one and list down all the functions for that particular component. Target का definition फिर से देखते हैं. This is very important because target properly समझ में आना चाहिए. the target is linked to the main function of the system. It is, and to do that, look at the main purpose why the system exists. For example, this bottle. The target is to hold water, to maintain the position of water within the confines of this. And the target is water, clearly. Now, if the lid of the bottle had a UV LED in it, and I press this, I have a timer on this, LED runs on for 20 seconds. Then for that LED on the lid, the target is germs, bacteria inside the water. Because for that lid, this lid exists. Okay, there's another thing that holds the water. It does not let the water in its position. But to LED light level to most of the function and that comes to be the target is the bacteria. So target आपको देखना why the existence is why does that LED light exists inside this lid? So the target is that you're making the lid. That is the innovation that you're doing in your product. And the target is the germs. But the bottle overall, depending on which part of the system, again, you see the context changes. You're working on the lid, the target is bacteria. You're working on the bottle, the target is water.
Water and gas, it is not separate document because the focus.
There are separate components. Yeah, I can remove the. This still is a bottle.
But the system is the whole, both the things together.
When you say that the purpose is to hold water in its position inside this container, then yes. But otherwise, this is a topic of the system itself. This, yes. The point and it's system can still hold water. No, it cannot hold the maintain the temperature of the water inside it. Because the water will exchange, the heat will get exchanged. This was to stop heat from the water. Stop exchange, stop movement of air.
Water का function है वो water को hold करना स्टोर करना ही है in every state. बबल स्टेट स्टेट चेंज करना तो water मस्त पानी निकल जाएगा. And so we have
It's not able to do it strong capacity. Capacity हो गया. Recap सही है उसको there can be another design of the bottle and I will show it back to you later in this course. इसको आप धीरे धीरे ऐसा मर्जी कर दो this will not use for storage. This design is not effective. There can be another design. Geometrically, they can prove to you that it will not be prevent any spillage. In design way, this was necessary to complete the function of the bottle. But the bottle still would exist without the lid. In that particular bottle that I'm talking about, it will not maintain the temperature, but it will definitely hold the liquid in the container itself. It will not maintain the liquid still. For our function model, this is very basic. I'm talking about the function model that we are taking. For our function model, which is specific to the problem that I'm intending to solve, the target is already clear. Now, this bottle has performed so many functions. For example, car was there to move the passengers from one place to another, cargo from one place to another. But I said there is another function of this car, which is to inform the user. How is that? So, Google valid function. Now, depending on what was my main purpose of getting that Ferrari, that becomes the main parameter of value. Target becomes the user, not the person sitting inside the car. Are you getting it? Depending on what the function model is problem specific. The same system may have 20 different targets. All this is also very options. Are you with me? Is this clear?
So the target will depend on the type of object as well we are looking for. Like if we take the example of bottle, so we cannot just take each system as a bottle. Or like we have to define that is it a thermoflask bottle or a non-thermal bottle. So if it is a thermoflask, then we will say it maintains the temperature. If it is non-thermal, then we will say that it holds.
For that, this is something that you have in your hand. When it is not a thermoflask, you want it to maintain the temperature. You may say, okay, I want it to maintain it. It doesn't. Then it's sufficient. But if you think that is a function of importance to you, you say this, so that's a function of importance sufficient. You change the design of the water so that it is able to maintain the temperature also. And people are here with the nothing over to spill that guy. Change the design of the water so that it does not spill when they come inside. Right. So one statement that I don't want to keep a cap, but I want the water to still retain the contents of the liquid that has to be inside it. Yeah. Are you with me?
सर आपने बताया कि फंक्शन होने के लिए कोई कंपोनेंट होना चाहिए, इंटरैक्ट होना चाहिए और कुछ फिजिकल और चीज या पैरामेडिकल हो या कुछ मेंटेन है। तो सर मैंने इसे क्या किया टोटल दिया, इसको क्या बोतल का फ्लोर वाटर को और वाटर लिया, तो सेम स्टैंडर्ड मेथड से मैं राइट में। लेकिन सर जब हम अंदर में 5 वाटर है वो तो बाहर से टच तो नहीं हो रहा है, यस बाहर की एरिया से टच तो नहीं हो रहा है, तो वो फंक्शन इंटरेक्शन टच बोलते हैं तो वो भी नहीं हो रहा है, तो वो सर फंक्शन सर आपने बताया कि इसका फंक्शन होता है कि बाहर से इंटरेक्ट कर रहा है कि नहीं।
So, you have to listen extremely carefully. I said that it stops the air from going inside the liquid. You want to not even put air as a super system component. That is a layer, is it not? It stops it from getting inside the water. That is how it is. So we have to see what cools water. Okay, air cools water. And because the trap stops the air from touching the water, it maintains. Are you able to see this? So, we will now do this exercise for every component in the paint filling system industrial device. Okay? So, a function can exist only where there is a plus sign in the interaction matrix. If there is no plus sign, there can be no function there. But where there is a plus sign, there can be more than one functions. There can be useful, there can be harmful functions, there can be basic, additional or auxiliary functions. Okay? Or there may be no functions. So अब हम जो भी functions बनाएंगे उनके आगे हम labeling करेंगे basic, auxiliary, हम अभी now. Okay? But when you make your diagram, when you are analyzing your product, when you are analyzing your engineering system, you may put in MPV1, MPV2, MPV3, and each one may have a different weight when you finally calculate it. Okay? But for now, just for the class, for this thing, we will keep it simple enough. Basic, auxiliary, additional. Okay? So, harmful, insufficient, excessive, and normal. So the other labels we will use in this class. You can use different labels when you make your function diagram, but you have to clearly build a legend. What does what mean? So that मैं जब आपका diagram evaluate करूँ तो मैं आपको आपके model को उस तरह से देख पाऊँ. Okay. So this was the paint filling system that we've already worked on. We already have its component list. We already have its interaction matrix. And now we want to start to write the functions. Would you want to attempt this first and then we look at how we've defined it in the slides over here, or should I go ahead? I would say थोड़ा सा काम करो इस पे. This is the paint filling system. इसका interaction matrix आपके notebooks में होगा already. You start to write at least a few functions or a few components. You can pick up, let us say, float first, and lever, then yeah, float, lever, switch. ऐसे कैसे भी pick करो. This is the interaction matrix. This is the model. Just try to list down the functions of different. You have 10 minutes. Try to list down the functions that you think you would want to model in the function model there. Where there's a minus sign, there can be no function. Where there's a plus sign, there can be one function, many functions, useful functions, harmful functions, or no functions at all. There's an interaction with no functional consequence. So anything can happen. Just start to formulate some functions. List down some function that exists with this and this engineering system there. That Sorry. So, no, consider the child how to function. You have to say everything. This harmful function is something that is preventing my movement of my function in the desired direction. Should we look at the way we could model it? You are modeling it already, but another way to model it, should we look at that? Okay. So here we are. Float moves lever insufficiently because when the paint stills, that is your problem and that is the function. That is the point where we need to model the function. So float moves the lever insufficiently. It is a useful function, but insufficiently performed. And float holds paint. That is a harmful function. So no description, no rambling, nothing else. It's a harmful function. Leave it.
So we won't talk about that float maintains the position of lever. Rather than that, we will talk about the problem that we were facing.
Yes. Because that is the problem. So we have to, whatever we have done, we notice that आपको इस static situation में या एक good situation में function model नहीं बना. The reliance of the function model, whether there is some sort of that thing on the spacing, and you've done the qualification analysis, you've done this, you've done that. Now make the function model so that you can identify where the harmful function is. How many of you have identified holding paint as a function and a harmful function like that? Sorry? For the lever, for the float, I'm saying. Paint of color these are but for the float, how many of you had put in a function that it holds the paint and therefore it is a harmful function? Because that is where the column is coming from. Then lever holds float. Does it normally? Have we heard? We did not discuss anything about the lever breaking or the float breaking from the lever or anything like that. So it is doing it normally. It's a useful function done normally. Now it can't control the switch sufficiently. It was supposed to turn the switch off. It is not able to turn the switch off because of whatever reason. But that function is happening insufficiently. Then switch controls the motor. Again, an auxiliary function over here, insufficiently. Motor rotates the pump. Auxiliary function, excessively. Now, do you realize what using the word excessive was also important? Are you able to see this? Then pump moves the paint, basic function, excessively. Paint is the target of the paint filling system. Radiators to I or nickel भी है. What is this? What your system is saying? Is the radiator the paint part filling? What part is filling? See, if the problem that I was facing was that radiators were not getting painted properly, then the radiators would be that happy.
But if we talk about the earlier, we concluded that the objects being painted were the target of that field system.
Okay. All the entire things. How we are taking up all of that? 80 seconds straight.
So that time we talked about the system, but now we are talking just about the problem.
Problem. Think about the function model in the context of the problem. Do you realize this?
So let that switch control. So switch is controllable because that this switch is not pressed on time. So
That is where there is some insufficiency there. So you are written in the going forward way, but you have to actually read it from the going backward way. Also, picture analysis. What has happened? The paint has been moved excessively. Why? Because motor rotated the pump excessively. Why? Because switch controlled the motor insufficiently. Why? Symptom था उससे आप पीछे जाओगे then you will see this is the foundation. Are you going to see this? That's why cause effect analysis are done before we did the function model.
functions of deflect are dependent on.
So she's saying, could we say that flow just stopping the place, village?
So it is making
This flow really stopping the place, village? Does it stop? Better way to look at. All it does is it moves the lever. Something else triggers something else triggers something else. That means the solution would be okay flow to show them. For example, हमने food वाला example लिया था, I have a headache and we did buy and it's like more salt in my food. But now, did the salt cause my headache? Yes, yes, but what caused my headache? I mean, what was diabetes? No, that was more salt. What was more salt? Those was I eating junk food. I salt. Why am I eating junk food? Because I cook. But I have no food and I don't have time to cook. Why do I not time to cook? Because I'm in a job that requires me to work from 8 to 10 in the night. Why am I in that job? Because I did not study well in my college. So, why can you perfect there? You have to stop there, just one stop consequence. So, Anuj, are you able to see where to start from? In that context, in analysis manner. And you will notice during those classes that okay, all of these are the valid formulations. You know, going forward, they will get confused. क्यों? तो इसको अपना नाम पूरा normal कर रहा है? अगर normal कराना तो ये कैसे होगा? Okay. Yes.
So then the
Yes.
the main target is software has a 50-day
First, we're working on the problem. For every problem, target could be different. For every concept or the same system, target could be different.
how that is different. Actually,
Only where there is a class, only where there is a class, there can be a function. Places where there is no class, there can be no function. So if you see a function exists, but it is not marked as class in the system, then there is something wrong. You have missed out some component, you have to go back. You have to read this. Is that okay?
Sir, if we are only looking at the problem specific function, so won't we say that motor is pumping extensively, so it is
ये तो बोला है
so then,
motor pumps excessively.
then it can be categorized as a harmful function.
Oh, harmful means you will not let the motor pump the paint. You never wanted the paint to be pumped.
But the problem is filling of the bed.
ज़्यादा पेंट पंप कर दिया, इतना करना था ज़्यादा कर दिया, that is the problem. Excess can be a problem, right? See, पैसा है उतना अच्छा है, excess क्या फर्क पड़ता है, कभी नहीं देंगे. But no, excess has its own challenges. Yes, अगले कितने कहानी शुरू हो गई है. ठीक है. So the motor is there to pump the paint. That is a useful function. You want that to happen, is it not?
So
It is being done excessively. That is the problem.
the motor is pumping the paint at a normal phase only, but since it is pumping again and again and again, that is what causing the problem. So if the problem was rather than the float holding so much of paint, if the problem was that the motor was excessively like there is a disruption in the motor and it excessively pumps the paint, then the motor then it can be categorized as a harmful function.
Even if this function is useful for the system, you have to pump the paint. This is a function. Harmful का मतलब I wanted to pump the paint, but I removed the rushing. I'm taking it the result in the opposite direction of the desired direction.
Motor starts pumping paint. Function getting out of control.
That is excessive or that is insufficient or whatever. Out of control means it is not normal. So think for something. Right now, excessively is not good. Are you able to see this? Then barrel contains paint. Normal. Barrel से किसी ने कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं करा. ठीक है? Paint moves float. Ideally paint ऊपर उठता है, paint बढ़ रहा है तो उसको float को move करना था. Now that is what it is not doing. So it is insufficient. Tank contains paint. Basic function, but insufficiently done. तभी spill हो गया.
The paint and float are interacting, so this could be a basic function because paint was the target.
What is the object of this function? Paint is the carrier over here. This kind of function is defined by the object of the function. When the object is paint, it is basic. Over here, the object is float. It is an engineering system component. So this is an auxiliary function. Accessible content करेगा तो उसको ही नहीं मिलेगा. Insufficient हुआ तभी तो spill कर गया. Its job was to contain the paint. जितना मर्जी paint है मैं contain कर लूँ. We look at the job of the tank. What was the job of the tank? To contain the paint. Now, if the tank was infinitely sized, would this problem have been applied? No. It is limited size. Has insufficient capacity for the paint that is component float. Efficiently perform. That is one that anything excessive हो करता तो बोल्ड कर लेता फिर तो कोई कॉलम ही नहीं थी कॉलम ही ना होती फिर ना
Sir, paint in solidified paint is
but is that a consequence to you?
it's a paint solidified tank, the next time paint, less paint.
So example बता रहे हैं we are looking at the problem mathematics. See, you can easily get characterized by 10,000 paints. For example, he's saying paint gets solidified inside the tank. So my tank capacity further reduces. I thought about that. But there is a capacity of the tank. He never wanted the paint to split. If it is a problem, then they will handle another problem, which is that radiators are not able to take sufficiently and therefore are not getting painted. We will come to that then. There is a steering and the other back. That is not the problem that the user said. User said there are paints to look at and solve this problem for me. There can be 20,000 problems, but what does it have to do with that to solve? Are you using this? So, again, see, as engineers or designers, we are not moved when we are asked to make a model. But the most common direction में ये करता है, make the model as much detailed as possible, representing everything that is possible. That is the directive given to us, right? We are not doing that. And making a function model for solving the problem, we have a very specific goal. Are you with me? There can be 10,000 things happening in the vicinity. Arjun's story, remember? And Grove's another. There was this issue on which the fish was put and the beam was moving. You have to look at its reflection in the water underneath and shoot an arrow and look at size. Now there were thousands of people sitting, some howling, whatever, how is this pandit or someone coming and doing this, and we can't do it. So many things happening. There is Draupadi, very beautiful looking and of interest to Arjuna. There is Krishna, knowing that okay, this will Arjuna. There are these Duryodhana and Karna also sitting there, trying to locate these in the Anthony. So many things happening. Right? There is a recommendation on the Greek of I could want to think everything. Arjuna could I feel about everything, but there is a focus on the problem. So the system may do then also things. The paint may solidify on the inside wall of the panel also. So what? Am I bothered about that now? Is that a problem? Yes, it is a problem. But am I solving that problem now? No. Okay. I'm not even modeling it in my system. Possible no consequence for now. Whatever someone else is saying, that is their problem now. Is it okay? So now that is the, how do we say, that is the tabular formation of a function model, but we are more visual people. So we make the function model like this. And now we have color coding also. Harmful functions we use red color. Okay. And insufficient functions we use dashed line. Normally for form functions we use regular. In fact, even excessive, they are used to dash line. So your visual model, now you don't need to write insufficient, excessive or something. I would have rather preferred excessive for baby line user. I've seen that. The next session. Okay. So baby line, of course, then this visual representation communicates the reader. And now you see, I have some components, I have some interactions modeled, and now whether you know what this paint management system is or not is, you are not good. Are you with me on this? Huh? We can say that just give me a second. Yeah. In terms of review, we say that the main goals of function analysis are to provide a functional representation of an engineering system, to identify functional disadvantages of the components in a system, and to rank the functions for further trimming. What is trimming, we will talk about later. Okay. And the outcome of the function analysis is a model of an engineering system in a tabular or in a graphical format. Is that okay? Now, all of you have your problem statements, your engineering systems, you already identified those. So, why don't you try your hands on one problem in the engineering system at a time, right? That you want to solve. We have all. Now, this work we are going to ask teams. अगर आपने teams बना लिए, this work we are going to ask teams. Then go around in the room and do it. If you have not performed teams yet, you can make a similar function model for, let us say, the hair dryer. Identify the problem with hair dryer. Do it for that. But I want you to get some practice on making a function model. So whenever the object of my function, whenever the object of my function is a system component, function is an auxiliary function. What is the object of the function in the foreign model? Is the argument. Is that someone? Comes as a the second.
There are fields, there is a proposed system, there is this seat, there is this back, there's this lever which I can move to push the chair up, pneumatic system which I can use to push the chair up or down. Then comfort level is this is no function is happening. The chair provides insufficient support in my arm. This is also one component of the super system. especially आपको जिस मतलब वो नहीं है Someone must say I can target a lot of target those numbers. Solve the आपको बिजनेस मॉडल में आपके एलिजिबल है Because we're talking about the product and it's all about sometimes we talk about joke. I'm not talking about social and the level of farmers. We're talking about development. That's so money dynamics on this. Money dynamics by answer होता है जो resource from the company are not at the time of the conferences, What is the family? One way or one thought should be that or excessive normal or insufficient. Texture of your hair and length of your hair. There are three different parameters that you want to measure when you're talking about hair. Then what is the weight or what is the performance level? So friends, I hope that you've got some kickstart on your function models. You have to continue and complete those function models for yourself. That is anyways you have to do. Let me just quickly summarize some key terms of function modeling for all of you. What we have done until now is we have said that a function is an action performed by one component called function carrier to change or maintain a parameter of another component called the object of the function. Function carrier is the component performing a function. The component whose parameter is changed or maintained as a result of the function is called the object of the function. A parameter is a comparable value, something that you can measure, or an attribute of the component of the object. And main function is the function for which an engineering system is designed or assigned over there. Basic functions are useful functions towards the target of the engineering system. Additional functions are useful functions assigned or acting on the components of a super system that are not the target. And auxiliary functions are useful functions that act on a component of an analyzed engineering system. They're not even going to the super system level. They're acting within the engineering system. A function rank is the characteristic that determines the importance of the function, and it is based on the object and the type of function. Okay? And harmful function is a function that worsens the parameters of its object instead of improving them. Now, useful function is a function that changes the parameters in the required direction, and it could be it could be excessive, insufficient, or normal. We may talk about the cost also, where we say a cost is insignificant, acceptable, or unacceptable. That is one thing that we could do. And what we always would want to do is that we would want to see the relative value of different components by the virtue of the kind of functions those components are performing. The value is sigma of functions divided by cost of the component. So to be able to arrive at the value, we have to add all the functions performed by every component in the engineering system. Okay? So we'll close here, and you will have to continue with your function modeling. We would have some way, we will define some way for you to submit the function model at some point of time. Not this week, because I would want to spend some time next class, Tuesday that is, in helping you review and refine your function models. Because अगर अभी हम वो ठीक से नहीं करेंगे तो आगे का सब काम आपका गड़बड़ होता रहेगा. Function model is a very important step, and we can discuss and review that. Once we have reviewed, you have refined your models, then we will have an opportunity to submit that as an assignment. Is that okay? Chali, all the best.